What I will be discussing with you is now a very crucial topic in your SBR exam, but at the same time, it is a very easy topic for two reasons. A, it is based on common sense, and B, this is something that you have already studied before at some point of time in your ACCA journey. The topic that I'm talking about is ethics. So, be it the SBR exam that you are writing, or be it the diploma IFRS exam that you are writing, this topic is super critical when it comes to answering certain questions in the paper. In your SBR exam, there's a 20-mark question in section A dedicated solely to ethics. In diploma IFRS also, certain questions will have ethical implications that you will have to answer. Now, as I said, the good part about this topic is you have already studied this at some point of time in the past. And that means understanding that is not a tough activity. The only effort that you will have to put in is in terms of understanding how to answer the questions from this topic. Okay, so let's have a basic look at the ethics discussion. So, if I were to ask you that what exactly are ethics, I think one answer that I usually get is okay, ethics are moral principles, ethics are guidelines on, how you should behave. Ethics are basically, some of those markers which guide good professional behavior. So, if you were to call yourself good professionally, if you were to call yourself compliant professionally, there are certain basic requirements that we have in terms of what and how professionals are expected to behave. And for that, it is necessary for you to understand that when you are a professional accountant, you carry with you the image and the name of the institute that you are basically representing. So whether you are an ACCA, you are an Indian Chartered Accountant, you are a CMA, you are a CPA, you could be any of these, but you as a professional are occupying a position of great responsibility, and you are answerable to a lot of stakeholders in the organization and outside the company. Now, who are these stakeholders? Stakeholders are basically people who are closely interested in the functioning of the organization. For example, shareholders are owners of the company, which means shareholders are very closely concerned with how things are functioning in the organization. For example, if the company registers good profit, that means the overall share price of the company in the future will go up and the wealth of shareholders will increase. If the company gets caught in a scandal, or if the company is found doing some illegal or unlawful activities, then in that case, the reputation of the company suffers massively. And when the reputation of the company suffers, naturally, the share price will fall, the company might close down. So, shareholders are very closely connected. The employees also, if the company continues to grow, the employees know that they will keep on getting increments and they will keep on getting their growth. If the company again is on the verge of shutting down, then they will fear for their job security. So, employees as individuals are also connected. They are impacted financially when the company goes through its ups and downs. They are also stakeholders, lenders. A bank. Why is a bank or a financial institution interested whether you are functioning properly or not? Think about it this way, that a lender has given a loan to your company, and if the company continues to flourish and grow, there will be a regular stream of cash flows, and the lender will keep on getting his interest and principal amount at the right time. However, if the company is going through a tough time, then the company might default on interest payment and principal repayment, and the lender will suffer. So he wants the company to grow and function and thrive. Talking about suppliers and customers, when I say suppliers and customers, I'm basically, they are also people who deal with the organization on a daily basis. Now, say I am into the business of buying and selling electronic items. Now, one of the companies that I buy from is, say, Philips. Now, if Philips introduces new products, then naturally I get to sell those in my store. Philips is my supplier, and innovation and growth in Philips is directly impacting me in a positive way. The flip side is also true. If the company stops functioning properly, or if it is going through a crisis, naturally my distribution and sales is going to get hurt. So, suppliers and customers are also closely connected with the organization. So is the government. Why do you think is government a critical stakeholder? Think about it. Government derives its revenue from the taxes it collects from you. So if you do well, that means your income is higher. Your income is higher means you are paying higher taxes to the government, and the government is, of course, happy. Now, if your business were to shut down, the government would lose tax revenue. So they don't want the organization to shut down. In fact, they want the organization to flourish. They have very close vested interest in your success. And of course, the public at large, because you operate in the society, you take resources from the society, so it is your responsibility to give back to the society and not cause too much harm. So also the business entity is responsible for generation of jobs, for sustaining the environment in which it functions. So all of these individuals are very closely connected with the organization, and their fortunes would depend upon how well the organization functions. This knowledge of stakeholders might come in handy in some of the questions that we attempt. Now, as a as a professional accountant who's working in the financial reporting domain, who's working in the internal audit domain, who is working as a statutory auditor, he will often be faced with a situation of ethical dilemma. Ethical dilemma is basically, what should I do? Sometimes, you know what? The organization wants to start a new project in a rural area, and it knows that if the project starts, it will generate a lot of employment. But the government authorities are being a little unethical, and the government authorities are saying, give us a bribe of 5 lakh rupees and we'll sanction your plan. And you know that once that plan gets sanctioned, you are going to set up a manufacturing plant in the interior rural areas, which will generate a lot of employment, and it is going to help the economy and it will help your company. So on one hand, you know that the project is going to generate something constructive for you and for the economy as a whole. But to get that done, the government officials are asking for a bribe. Now, this is an ethical dilemma. If you pay the bribe, technically it is unethical. But if you don't pay the bribe, the project will not get sanctioned within the appropriate timelines. So the professional accountant will always be faced with such situations. He could face a pressure from a senior official sometimes to adopt an incorrect accounting treatment. See, if I am an employee in any organization, if I am an employee in any company, say I'm an employee with Plutus Education, I am in the finance team, I'm a junior chartered accountant, and there is someone senior that I report to. I know that the accounting treatment he's asking me to perform is not correct as per the requirements of the standard. For example, I know that this revenue should be recorded in the next year because the performance obligation is fulfilled in the next year. But my senior is specifically telling me to include it in the current year's revenue. Again, this is an ethical dilemma. If I don't listen to him, I stand to get my I stand to lose my job. But if I listen to him, then I'm not doing right by the profession that I stand for. So these are ethical dilemmas that we often face. And in such situations, a concept called whistleblowing might come to your rescue. Suppose you have noticed some wrongdoing in the organization. Suppose you have noticed that something is not functioning properly. Suppose you have noticed that there is theft, there is embezzlement, there is fraud happening, and you want to report it to the appropriate authorities. But somewhere you are worried that if I report it to the appropriate authorities, my name will come out in the public domain, and there could be threats to my life, threats to my survival, threats to my job security. So I want to highlight that particular wrongdoing, but I know for a fact that if I highlight, there will be other repercussions. So, in order to ensure anonymity to people who want to report, organizations often come up with something that is known as the whistleblowing policy. So, in the whistleblowing policy, you report a wrongdoing, but your name is not mentioned anywhere. It is like an anonymous tip that you are giving to the organization so that they become aware of these frauds and wrongdoings, but your name is not dragged into that particular mess. Organizations are very often encouraged to follow the whistleblowing policy and set it up so that employees feel secure in reporting wrongdoings. As a professional accountant, you should know that while maximization of shareholder wealth is the primary responsibility of any organization, it is not the only responsibility, right? It is not the only aim of the organization. Maximization of shareholders' wealth, generation of profits, yes, these are top objectives that you need to fulfill. But along with that, you also have to ensure several other aspects for you to be called as a socially and otherwise responsible organization. For example, you need to have hygienic and safe working conditions for your employees. Also, you need to make sure, say for example, in today's day and age, you want to encourage participation of women in the workforce, they have young babies. It is the responsibility of the organization to set up a creche or such other facilities so that the women can work while also taking care of the children. Or these days, mental health leaves and all of these facilities are also being provided by companies. That will be a good step in the right direction so that you don't harm the social fabric of the community that you are staying in, and at the same time it helps to improve the productivity also. And once the productivity is more, the profitability will be more, the wealth maximization will happen, and everybody will be happy in the long run. So that aspect is something which has often been ignored in the past, and as young professional accountants, you should be aware that you cannot report only on compliance with the law, or you cannot or should not think only about compliance with provisions of the accounting standards. You should be cognizant of the fact that as an organization there are so many different aspects that need to be fulfilled, and you are the custodians of that profession, so it is your responsibility to safeguard all of these aspects. See, businesses need to comply with accounting standards, and this is made mandatory through law. For example, in India, Companies Act 2013 makes it mandatory to prepare financial statements as per accounting standards. So, see, that compliance you are anyway going to perform. The regulatory environment, that is the legal framework in your country, makes it mandatory. There is nothing extraordinary or nothing different about it. If you don't perform that responsibility, naturally there will be prosecution against you. You need to ensure compliance with accounting standards, but there are so many other aspects that have to be fulfilled, which is with respect to corporate social responsibility, with respect to sustainability, with respect to whistleblowing. And you, as professional accountants, as custodians of this profession, have a huge responsibility in fulfillment of this responsibility. With that in mind, let's dive further into our understanding of ethics. Ethics, primarily, as we discussed, are guiding principles of good moral behavior. What makes you a good professional accountant? How do you safeguard the reputation of the profession that you represent? These ethical principles were laid down by the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants, which is an independent standard setting body. Like you have the International Accounting Standards Board. What is the International Accounting Standards Board? It helps in creation of accounting standards which everyone else is expected to follow. Similarly, the International Ethics Standards Board for Accountants lays down the guiding ethical principles that entities need to fulfill. The professional accountants need to follow these rules. See, because as a professional accountant, I am a member of ACCA, I am a member of ICA, I am a member of CPA, I am a member of so many different organizations. So I'm bound by the ethical codes of conduct because what I do is reflective of the organization that I represent. So there are five fundamental ethical principles that you need to be aware of, which are these: integrity. Integrity basically stands for truthfulness and honesty in all your dealings. Basically, don't lie or do not misrepresent any detail in the financial statements. That is integrity, being truthful, being honest. Objectivity is to make sure that whatever you do is free from bias. This bias might stem because of a personal relationship with someone in the organization. This bias might stem because, you have a preference for a particular accounting treatment. Let's assume that, I am a junior accountant and I have a senior in the same organization, and that senior is telling me that, listen, Satyamev, uh, we need to achieve, our company is going to get listed in the next year, and there are certain conditions that we need to fulfill. One of those conditions is achieving a certain level of profitability. So this person tells me that, listen, Satyamev, a revenue of 2 crores has not occurred this year. It is basically occurring in the next year. But I am telling you, recorded this year. Now, ideally, I should not listen to this person, but he now starts exerting pressure. He now starts exerting influence on me. And I know that if I don't listen to him, he might give me a negative remark in my yearly performance appraisal, and I might end up losing the job. So, in that case, my concern is I don't want to lose the job, so I might as well cave into the undue influence that he has created on me, and I will end up recording a revenue which has not occurred this particular year. Again, my objectivity gets impaired in that case. When I say my objectivity gets impaired, that means now I'm not bias free. My decision has been biased. There is a conflict of interest that has taken place. You could have various other situations also where a close personal relationship might harm your objectivity. There are times, in today's day and age, so everyone uses AI tools for different work. Now, there is sometimes a bias in people's minds that if the output is coming from artificial intelligence, if it is an AI generated output, they tend to place more reliance on it, and they tend to place more reliance on objectivity is also affected, or when there is a conflict of interest. Say I have to hire someone as a member of my team, and I forward my sister's CV, then naturally I will never be able to take an objective unbiased decision in her case. And if I end up hiring my sister, then there is some sort of a personal relationship which has influenced the hiring decision. So in such a situation, there is a conflict of interest. And if I want to avoid conflict of interest, what I should do is, if my sister is going to be interviewed, I should not be a part of the decision making process. Somebody else should be appointed. Okay, then professional competence and due care. Professional competence means skill, competence means knowledge. Do I have the right skill set? Do I have the right knowledge base to properly execute an assignment? Think about it. If somebody gives me an assignment to do sustainability assurance, now I am not an expert on sustainability assurance, I am an expert on banking. So if I don't have the right knowledge base, I should not take up that assignment. And if I have been appointed in a particular capacity, before I start that work, I should upgrade my knowledge base in order to be at par with the requirements of that job. Which is why ACCA often conducts the continuing professional development program, where qualified professionals keep on getting latest updates via training sessions in different domains, which helps them to upgrade their skill and knowledge base so that they are in line with whatever is happening in the world around them. And due care. Due care means acting diligently and with focus in accordance with the applicable technical and professional standards. That is what we mean by due care, being focused, being careful about your job, and understanding that there are a lot of people and a lot of stakeholders who are going to place reliance on the work that you have done. They are going to make decisions on the basis of the work that you have done and certified. So it is critical that you do your job diligently with a lot of care and caution. Then comes confidentiality. Confidentiality here is any information that you have acquired in the course of performing your duties. You should not disclose such information to anyone. Say, for example, I am a chartered accountant who's working with Lotus Education, and I know their revenue recognition policy. I know how revenue is calculated and accounted for. Or I know what legal matters are pending, and I know the finer nitty-gritties of the case. So it is my responsibility to not disclose this information to anyone else, unless, of course, I'm called by a court of law to give evidence in a particular case. Only under that situation or some other specified circumstances am I allowed to divulge that information. Otherwise, that information remains with me or should remain with me. And the last one is professional behavior. Professional behavior is acting in a way that suits the dignity of the profession that you represent. Basically, complying with laws and regulations, behaving in a professional manner when you are in the public domain, and avoiding any conduct that the professional accountant knows or should know will discredit the profession. Think about it. There is a chartered accountant who gets drunk and he drives a four-wheeler, and the four-wheeler meets with an accident. You know what the headline is going to be? The headline isn't going to be XYZ met with a road accident. Drunk chartered accountant meets with a road accident. So this action of yours is bringing disrepute to the profession that you are representing. So you should avoid that kind of behavior which brings disrepute or discredit to the profession that you represent. These five fundamental ethical principles, you have been studying these since quite a lot of time, and these are the very basis for the ethics question that is going to be tested in the paper. Now, an understanding of ethical principles is not complete without an understanding of threats to ethical behavior. What might end up impacting your ability to act in an ethically compliant manner? There are five specific circumstances that have been identified. The first one is self-interest threat. Now, I am an auditor. Think about this situation. Okay, I am an auditor of Reliance India Limited, and I also hold 100 shares of Reliance India Limited. While performing the audit, I come across a point and I know that Reliance has committed a major non-compliance which will cost the company penalty, and some of the directors might get imprisoned, so on and so forth. I know that this non-compliance has occurred. So what, as an auditor, what is my responsibility? It is my responsibility to specifically mention that point, highlight that point in the audit report, that this particular non-compliance has taken place and the financial statements do not present a true and fair view. I know that the moment I give this remark in my audit report and all the stakeholders read it, naturally the image of the company will get impacted, and very likely the share price of the company will fall. Now assume that before the audit report became public, the price per share was 1500. Now, because of this negative remark in the audit report, the share price falls by 500 and now it is 1000. When the share price falls, I am also a holder of the shares of Reliance India Limited. Earlier, I held 100 shares, each worth 1500. My overall wealth was 1,50,000. Now I continue to hold 100 shares, but after I give that remark in the audit report, the share price falls to how much? The share price falls to 900. So what is my wealth now? My wealth is 90,000, and 60,000 rupees of my wealth got eroded because of the remark that I gave in the audit report. Naturally, I don't want to lose my wealth. I want my share value and my portfolio to grow. So even after noticing that the financial statements of Reliance have a material misstatement, I should not, or I would end up not highlighting that particular point in the audit report and saying that the financial statements present a true and fair view. I will never comment on what the actual situation is, which means I am not fulfilling my responsibility as a professional accountant, and this is self-interest threat. Okay, now along with self-interest threat, there is something known as the self-review threat. Reviewing your own work. Why do you think that could be a problem? Okay, think about a situation where you have been appointed as the accountant of the company, as in you are responsible for overseeing the entire financial accounting, recording of transactions, preparation of financial statements, and then you are also appointed as the auditor. What does that mean? You will It is now your responsibility to come, review the financial statements and express an opinion. You see how messed up this is? You are the one who is preparing the financial statement, and then you are the one who is expressing an opinion whether the financial statements present a true and fair view. No person in this organization can be objective enough to review his own work and then express an opinion on whether that work has been performed correctly or not. So, if you are the auditor and you are also responsible for preparation of financial statements, that is a self-review threat. And that is a situation that you should try to avoid. Talking about Let me talk about familiarity threat first. You know what happens when you have a close personal relationship with the director at the client, or when somebody from your family or someone from your close friend circle is working there, then there is always a chance that you will not be able to discharge your function appropriately. The personal relationship will come in the way of you performing your duties properly. So if you have a close personal relationship with someone at the client, you should probably not take up that assignment. Another situation for a familiarity threat could be, you are an auditor of TCS and you have been auditing them for the last 4 years. Now, if you have been auditing them for the last 4 years, you know, Kiar, since the last 4 years, the statutory payables ledger has never had any problem. There has never been any misstatement. So you tell your team कि यार listen, don't pay too much attention to this ledger. इसमें कभी गलती होता ही नहीं है. There is never any misstatement in that. So why pay attention to it? And your team member does not check that ledger at all, only to realize later that this year there was a misstatement. Now, based on your familiarity, based on the fact that you know the client really well, for the last 4 years you did not find any misstatement, so you ignored the review of that particular item this year, and that misstatement escaped your review. So again, you are not able to discharge your function properly because of over familiarity with the client. Okay, then there is intimidation threat. Intimidation, the Hindi word for this is dhamki, to threaten someone. So you are the auditor and you have identified that there is a major misstatement in GST calculations and the GST values shown in the financial statements are wrong. Now, the client might threaten you saying that, listen, if you mention this point in the audit report, we will not continue your engagement in the next year. Now you get a fees of 1 crore rupees from this client. You don't want to lose that fees. So you give in to client's demand and you don't highlight this particular matter that you noticed in your audit of financial statements. Or there could be a threat to your physical safety sometimes. I know it sounds very, very dramatic, but something like this, if it happens, it will prevent you from discharging your responsibilities properly. Okay. And the last one is advocacy threat. The word advocacy or advocate here means, promoting the client's interests or canvassing for the client, like, sort of becoming like a brand ambassador for the client, which in a way then impairs your independence. When can that happen? Suppose the client says, Ki Satyamit, listen, you are our auditor, great, but we also want you to review our prospective financial information and then we want you to help us prepare a proposal that will be submitted to the bank. And then we'll get a loan on the basis of that proposal. And my fees will depend upon whether the proposal gets passed or not. Now, in this case, what happens? I want the client to get the loan. So I end up helping the client in misstating the financial statement so that a favorable picture is presented in front of the client. I promote the interest of the client. I, in a way, like, these days you have influencers who say that, okay, go and buy this product. And, I go and I'm like a financial influencer where I'm going and telling the bank, listen, I am a chartered accountant. Okay. I have gone through their financial statements. Everything is right. These projections are correct. Please grant them a loan. When I do that, because, I am trying desperately to help the client get a loan, I do this kind of promotion or this influencing activity, but that in a way impacts my ability to perform my role as the auditor properly, because as an auditor I'm supposed to look at financial statements with a lot of professional skepticism, right? I'm supposed to look at financial statements with a lot of with a fine tooth comb and go through every item carefully so as to question and verify whether the financial statements present a true and fair view or not. That is my responsibility as the auditor. But as someone who has been appointed for, helping the company get a loan, these two points might come in conflict with each other. And in my attempt to get loan for the client, I might end up ignoring my responsibilities as the auditor, and that is your advocacy threat. Now, threats are a little less important in the SBR exam as compared to the principles. These five principles are super critical. And of course, when we start solving the questions, you will know how to approach. Now, this is a small stepwise approach that I have given you in how to tackle the ethics question in your paper. When we do the actual question, you will understand what I'm trying to say. Now, this question is worth 20 marks, and there are 18 technical marks, 2 marks for professional skills. Ideally, you should note down the facts of the case, identify the ethical issues and which principles are being threatened. Is it a problem of objectivity? Is it a problem of professional competence and due care? Do you not have the necessary expertise to do the job? Then check if there are any weaknesses in internal controls. Identify that. That would be a rare circumstance, by the way. This would be a rare case. Huh? Check if there are any weaknesses in internal controls. Like some checks and balances in the organization are not operating properly. When we do that question, I'll explain you what internal controls are. So identify the ethical issues, identify the fundamental ethical principles which are being threatened. See if you can narrow down on a threat. It's okay if you don't do it for every question, and then recommend a course of action if you are asked to. Now, one common tip in most questions that you will see in your exam, apart from confidentiality, in most cases, integrity, objectivity, professional competence, and due care and professional behavior will be a problem. Will be a problem. Matlab, these four fundamental ethical principles will keep on getting violated in most questions. So that could be your starting point, and you don't avoid spending too much time. See where you can fit the current situation with these four challenges, and then proceed with your answering of the question. We will be doing questions on ethics very, very soon. So stay tuned for that. Thank you so much. And if you have any doubts, let me know in the comment section.